Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. Russia's war against Ukraine was the subject of an urgent meeting held yesterday at the National Security Bureau. President Andrzej Duda had discussions with Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki and the heads of the Defence Ministry and the Interior Ministry. A few days earlier, United States Secretary of Defence Lloyd Austin spoke to Russian Minister of Defence Sergei Shoigu and Ukrainian Head of Defence Alexei Reznikov. The meeting ended late in the evening, yet Siksheva, the head of the National Security Bureau, said that those present had been talking about the reconstruction of the energy and communication infrastructure in Ukraine. According to the official announcement, the conference was part of a series of such meetings that have been held since the beginning of Russia's war with Ukraine. The issues of Allied cooperation, further Allied support under NATO for Ukraine were also discussed, as well as information provided by Minister Shoigu during the talks, and the positions adopted by the Allies, clearly defining the tasks and serious consequences that may be associated with possible provocations related to the use of any form of nuclear weapons, including tactical nuclear weapons or a dirty bomb, the head of the National Security Bureau said. Siviera pointed out that the nature of the conflict in Ukraine changes with the change of the season and the weather conditions. The exhaustion of the resources of the Russian Federation to conduct an effective offensive, the transition to a basically defensive and criminal attacks on the civil infrastructure aimed at discouraging the Ukrainian people from taking up the fight to regain their territory also require adaptation of the Allied strategy and the approach in which Poland and its allies under the North Atlantic Pact support Ukraine, he said. Later, the head of the Presidential International Policy Bureau, Jakub Komok, stated that Russian money frozen in the banks of the European Union and Switzerland should be taken from Russia and transferred to the reconstruction of Ukraine. Russia cannot go unpunished in this war, he added. Komok announced that there was a continuing discussion about how to dispense this funding. Poland is in favour of a basic moral principle. The country that caused it should pay for the damage, and only then should it be money from the so-called donors. I think it is understandable for all of us. Sometimes there are doubts in the West, so we try to dispel them, added Jakub Komok. When asked whether Poland's voice was isolated in this matter, he replied that it is not so much alone as we have the courage. President Duda has the courage to say it openly. According to Komok, some people say they nod, but prefer to wait and listen to what others say. However, in my opinion, it is not particularly complicated, because Ukraine suffers losses due to the Russian aggression, and we can roughly estimate the size of these losses without any problems, he said. Poland's Senate has declared the Russian Federation a terrorist regime and called on the international community to support the International Criminal Court in investigating people responsible for war crimes in Ukraine. All senators voted in favour of the resolution, in which the Senate stated that on the 24th of February 2022, the armed forces of the Russian Federation unleashed a beastly war on Ukraine. Its aim is to wipe a sovereign country off the map and to wipe out the Ukrainian nation, the resolution continued. The Russian invaders are terrorizing the residents of Ukrainian towns, bombarding civilian targets, kindergartens, schools, theatres and housing estates. Bandits in Russian uniforms are torturing and murdering prisoners of war and civilians in the occupied territories. They are kidnapping Ukrainian children to raise them in a regime of janissaries. They are deporting, resettling and sending Ukrainian citizens to the farthest reaches of Russia, the resolution reads. The senators said they knew such acts of state terrorism from history, but that Europeans never thought they would be threatened with genocide and war crimes. Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin and his apparatus of violence have returned to the cruel practices of Stalin and the Hitler regimes, the Senate wrote. That is why Russia must be defeated and stripped of the possibility of threatening its neighbours. The Senate also hailed the efforts of all institutions and organisations researching and documenting crimes against the population of Ukraine, and called on the international community to support fully the International Criminal Court in launching an investigation into those responsible. Rishi Sunak faced opposition members in Parliament for his first Prime Minister's question time, a day after taking office. After being congratulated by opposition Labour Party leader Keir Starmer on becoming Britain's first ever Asian Prime Minister, Sunak faced questions about his decision to reappoint Suella Braverman as Home Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may I welcome the Prime Minister. The first British Asian Prime Minister is a significant moment in our national story. And it's a reminder that for all the challenges we face as a country, Britain is a place where people of all races and all beliefs can fulfil their dreams. That's not true in every country, and many didn't think that they would live to see the day when it would be true here. It's part of what makes us all so proud to be British. Was his Home Secretary right to resign last week for a breach of security?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I thank the honourable gentleman for his kind and indeed generous welcome to the dispatch box. I look forward to Prime Minister's question time with him, and I know that we will have, no doubt, robust exchanges, but I hope that they can also be serious and grown up. So I look forward to it. Well, he asked about the Home Secretary. The Home Secretary made an error of judgment, but she recognised that. She raised the matter and she accepted her mistake. And that's why I was delighted to welcome back into a united cabinet that brings experience and stability to the heart of government.
Sunak reinstated Braverman when appointing his cabinet less than a week after she resigned from the role for breaching government rules. A day before, former Prime Minister Liz Truss herself also resigned. First elected to Parliament in 2015, Braverman is regarded as being on the right wing of the governing Conservative Party and has notable support from some colleagues for her strong line on immigration.
I know he's been away for a few weeks, but he should have listened to what's been going on the last two. But anyway, I have to say, I'm surprised he's still defending non-dom status. He pretends he's on the side of working people, but in private he says something very different. Over the summer, he was secretly recorded at a garden party in Tunbridge Wells, boasting to a group of Tory members that he personally moved money away from deprived areas to wealthy places instead. Rather than apologise or pretend that he meant something else, why doesn't he now do the right thing and undo the changes that he made to those funding formulas?
Mr. Speaker, he mentioned the last few weeks. I am the first to admit that mistakes were made, and that's the reason I am standing here. But that is the difference between him and me. This summer, I was talking. I was being honest about the difficulties that we were facing. But when he ran for leader, he promised his party he would borrow billions and billions of pounds. I told the truth for the good of the country. He told his party what it wanted to hear. Leadership is not selling fairy tales. It is confronting challenges, and that is the leadership the British people will get from this government.
Last Monday, French President Emmanuel Macron and Pope Francis held nearly an hour of private talks, with the crisis in Ukraine and prospects for peace there expected to have been their main topic of discussion. The meeting was noticed in Poland because of the gift the French President gave the Pope, namely the first printing of Immanuel Kant's treatise entitled Perpetual Peace, a philosophical sketch. The book has a Polish language stamp in it saying Academic Reading Room in Lvov. During World War II, Poland lost at least 70% of its cultural treasures, and people wonder whether this is just another looted item. The green oval stamp is on the front page of the gift. It is impossible not to notice it, but perhaps French diplomats could not recognise the language. The Academic Reading Room in Lviv, an independent institution, started to operate in 1860 and ceased to exist during World War II. The Polish Foreign Ministry launched an inquiry into the book's origins. Piotr Gliński, the culture minister, determined it was not looted. Immanuel Kant's book, presented by President Emmanuel Macron to Pope Francis, is not a Polish war loss, Gliński said. We established the provenance of the book, among others, in cooperation with the Ossolinski Institute and with the French side. Everything indicates that the book was already in France at the turn of the 20th century. An Agence France Presse report on Tuesday cited an interview with Patrick Hatchuel, a Parisian bookseller who sold the rare edition of Kant's book to the Élysée Palace for under €2,500. Han Tuchel said he had no doubts that the book had not been looted by the Nazis. He added that the book had been owned by the library in Lviv in the years 1850 to 1870, and then it was probably sold. Around 1900, it was brought to Paris by the famous bookseller Lucien Bodin, who specialised in esotericism. The last owner of Kant's work was a private collector who bought it half a century ago, Hatchuel said, adding that the collector's son had then sold it and that everything is verifiable. Macron, accompanied by his wife Brigitte, arrived at the Vatican and was greeted by an honour guard of Swiss guards in the San Damaso courtyard before taking an elevator to the official papal study in the Apostolic Palace. The Vatican said their private talks lasted 55 minutes. Both sides are expected to issue statements later. Macron is in Italy to attend an international conference organised by Italy's San Egidio Community, a worldwide peace and charity group. He and the Pope will jointly close the conference at a special ceremony at the Colosseum in Rome on Tuesday. Opening the conference on Rome's outskirts on Sunday, Macron said he believed that there was a chance for peace in Ukraine, even as Russia warned the conflict could escalate. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.